Hello everyone, my name is Dakota Vaquero and welcome to today's lesson. In this activity, we're going to learn about the water cycle by creating a fun 6-panel digit comic using Pixton. By combining science with creativity, you'll be able to teach others how water moves through Earth's water cycle while designing your own colorful comic. Let's get started. Alright, so before we begin, we're going to take a look at the student learning outcomes and objectives for today's lesson. So let's take a look at what we're going to be learning today. By the end of this activity, you'll be able to explain the 4 stages of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. You'll also create your own 6-panel comic using Pixton. Along the way, you'll practice using pictures, captions, and dialogue to teach a science concept in a creative way. Finally, you'll have the opportunity to share your finished comic and explain what you've learned. So, during this comic, explain the 4 stages of the water cycle, describe how water moves through Earth's water cycle, create the 6-panel comic, use pictures, dialogue, and captions to teach a scientific concept, and then share and explain the completed comic. This lesson is going to be connected to the next generation science standards because we'll be creating a model that explains how water moves through Earth's surface, atmosphere, and land. So instead of using and building a physical model, you're going to end up creating a digital comic that shows each stage of the water cycle. By using Pixton, you'll demonstrate your understanding of how water continuously moves through nature while also practicing both science and digital storytelling skills. All right, so now that we've talked about the objectives and what we're going to be going over, let's take some time to go over today's challenge. Imagine you're teaching younger students about the water cycle, but instead of giving them a worksheet, you're going to want to tell them the story through a comic. Your challenge today is to create a 6-panel comic using Pixton that follows one water droplet through its entire journey. Your comic should include the 4 stages of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. You'll also need to include at least 3 characters. Now, these characters don't all need to be on the same page. At least 2 of them should, but just ensure that you have 3 characters total, along with speech bubbles, captions, and pictures that clearly explain what's happening in each panel. Now remember, your comic doesn't need to look exactly like mine, which we're going to go over in a minute, but I do want you to be creative, use your imagination, and make sure your comic is unique while still teaching the science correctly. And on the slide, you can see that we also need to make sure we include the 4 stages of the cycle, 3 characters, speech bubbles, captions, and then pictures that explain each stage. Just be creative. All right, now I'd like to show you an example of what your finished project could look like. Remember, this is only an example. This is my example, and your comic can be different. Just be creative, however you guys want to do it. The important part is that it is clearly explaining the water cycle. So we're going to start with the first panel that I created. All right, here we can see a water droplet. Now, Pixton doesn't always have the best props to use for certain things. So when I went to water droplet, I couldn't really find any, so I just decided to use some rain. I named him Wally. So as you can see, he's floating over the ocean with the sun shining overhead. The sun is heating the water because Wally, when the sun's on him, is rising to the sky as water is vapor. This stage is called evaporation. Without the sun's energy, the water cycle could not begin. Now looking at the second panel, Wally has traveled high into the atmosphere where the air is much cooler. As the water vapor cools, it changes back into tiny droplets and joins other droplets to form a cloud. This stage is called condensation. Notice how I use both dialogue and pictures to help explain what's happening. As you can see here, we got the rain, they're speaking to each other, and they're planning on forming a cloud. Now in the third panel, the cloud becomes full of water droplets. Eventually, the cloud can't hold any more water, so Wally's going to fall back to Earth as rain. This stage is called precipitation. Depending on the weather, precipitation could also be snow, sleet, or hail, but in this example for you guys, I chose to do rain. Now, look over here, the fourth panel, as we can see, Wally lands back in the lake where the water begins to collect. This stage is called collection. Water can collect in lakes, rivers, oceans, ponds, or even underground before beginning the cycle again. And as you guys can see, I added some characters, and then the duck speaking, the rain speaking. You can add dialogue and text boxes. And now in the fifth panel, you'll notice the sun is shining once more. That reminds us that the water cycle never really ends. As the sun heats the water, evaporation begins and the journey repeats over and over. Then as you can see at the top, I titled everything, what's going on, what it's called. And on the last panel, Wally asked the reader if they can remember the 4 stages of the water cycle. I did this because it's kind of a fun way to review what we've learned so far, and it's a good way to end the comic with a question that encourages whoever's reading it to think about what's going on. So as you create your own comic, make sure every panel helps to tell the story. Use colorful backgrounds, interesting characters that you guys want to use, speech bubbles, and captions to make your comic easy to understand. Just have fun and try to be creative. Now, real quick, just to help you guys, you can click over here where you see the backgrounds to change backgrounds. Okay, and then when we want to add a prop, you can click props, and we'll click this and it'll populate on here. And then you can click this, or you can go here and click prop, and now I can or I can click words, and I can type anything I want right here, and as soon as I hit enter, it's going to populate as a text bubble. And that's how you do your text bubbles. And if I want to put something at the top here, I just click the background, and I go to words, and then I can type something in, and it'll appear up here. And so that's pretty much all there is to it. So just be creative and come up with your own unique ideas. Alright guys, before you submit your comment, I just want you to take one last look to make sure you've included everything in the checklist. Check that your comic has all 6 panels and that you've explained the 4 stages of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. Make sure you use pictures, dialogue, and captions that clearly explain what's happening in each panel. Remember, your comic doesn't have to look exactly like mine, like I said, but the goal is to create something that teaches someone else about the water cycle while showing your own creativity. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning how to create your own water cycle using Pixton. Have fun designing your own comic, and I can't wait to see the creative ideas you come up with. And again, good luck.